Do you know how many times I put on makeup in the morning, I'm like, I'm gonna film today, and then I get all prepared and then I don't film anything. But today, because I'm sick, because I feel like absolute crap, is the day that I have the motivation and the drive and the idea to film. How does that work? Anyway, welcome back. It's been a while. A little bit on where I've been. I told you guys, like in the beginning of sort of making content, especially more spiritually driven religious content, I will be taking my breaks. And because I take my breaks, I feel really bad that I don't, film, but I literally go through my spiritual process real time. I think of something, I feel something, I process it, I deal with it, and then I come and talk about it. And it's been like that for 4 years, and you all have been extremely gracious and patient with me as I have put some time in between my posting. I hope that this time around I can sort of come to a regular schedule, because this is the thing that makes me the happiest. This makes me feel like I've had a good day. This makes me feel productive, and also really does help me process what I'm going through. And I want to talk to you about guilt. I made a TikTok video a few weeks back talking about guilt from the framework of Sanatana Dharma spiritually, how to actually like purge it out physically by letting go. It's a long one. It's a 10-minute one on TikTok. Don't ask me why I insist on making long videos on TikTok when they very much clearly belong here on YouTube. But I pick up the camera and I speak, and that's just kind of how it goes. And then today I filmed like sort of an update on TikTok, but I just feel like I have more to say on the subject, so I thought I would open up my camera and kind of speak on it further. You're gonna have to excuse my voice. You're gonna have to excuse if I cut a bunch, because I'm not feeling well at all. I feel very like dizzy and very tired, but I'm good enough to film, so let's just get right into it before I lose my mind. I want to give a little bit of a premise. So I have been struggling with guilt and regret and shame for a long time. And I would say like that has been the 3 main feelings I've had over the course of a few years. Along with obviously like the polar opposite being peace and joy, and like there's everything in between as well. But I think like the main driver for my guilt is how I was in my youth. And my husband consoles me all the time, and he's like, we all make mistakes when we're young. We all sort of deal with things when we're young, like we're supposed to make mistakes. And I've never really felt consoled by that, like mainly because my guilt and my shame was like a boulder, and it was so large and so big, and I like didn't know how to process it for a really long time. And then when I came to learn how to process it through the mechanism of letting go, I feel like I chipped away at it, but I never really like actually resolved all of it. Like I would say that the shame and the regret and all of that guilty boulder feelings, like large feelings, are still present with me. So I'm not gonna say that I am over it. I think like letting go is a continuous process. I don't think that there's ever gonna be an end date to that as long as we're alive. Because I think that's the use of this lifetime right here, is to process, it's to learn, it's to burn our karma. And part of that karma could be my guilt, could be my shame, and some of the deep feelings that I have could be a part of like what work I have to do in this lifetime. So I can't say that there's ever going to be an end date to the letting go process, but these things that I'm going to put forward to you, these thought processes I'm going to put forward to you. See, you got to be patient with me today. I've learned over the last few weeks and really sat with how I was feeling, and I think I'm at a good spot right now where I feel confident that when a guilty thought comes up, or when a shameful thought comes up, or when a regretful feeling comes up, I'll know how to work through it. And just because I feel happy that that's where I'm at, I'm talking about it now. So, but I don't want to give the impression that I'm over it, because I don't think I am. I think I'm working on it. But this channel and every platform I have is all about helping us heal, create, and grow, and the healing journey is never going to be linear. And so for us to have that expectation sort of puts us in a limiting life experience, along with setting our expectations quite high, because, you know, that's what life is for. Life is for stumbling, life is for fixing, life is for getting up, life is for enjoying. It's for all of it, but at the end of the day, we have to burn our karma, right? And you know, I don't need to get into all of the ways today on how we are doing that, but how we are gonna get over our guilt. Let's say class is in session for that. So a little bit of background. I would say like the primary driver of my guilt is, you know, directed towards my childhood and how I was to my parents. I think like the way that I respect and love and appreciate my parents today is pretty boundless. Like there is no limit to how much I love them. And I don't know, for the first time, this sounds so bad. It's not like they've made me feel like this, but I'm just gonna talk about it from the lens of my guilt. For the first time, I actually feel like they love and respect me as well. And that has nothing to do with how they've treated me. It's how I've understood the whole thing, right? Because of my lens. I'm gonna start talking about guilt and shame now. And I'm gonna use the metaphor of glasses because glasses to me are like our perspective, and we can take and remove and change our glasses all the time. If you're somebody who's living with a lot of shame, regret, and guilt, that's the prescription, if you will. How far can I go with this metaphor? And that's like the prescription of the lenses that you have. And so everything that you view in your life is from that perspective of guilt, shame, regret. And so I didn't see that my parents felt like they respected me because I was so blinded by my own guilt. This past weekend, I went to Texas and I had a phenomenal time. I went there with the purpose of resolving some of the stuff that was going on in my mind and some of the stuff that I was feeling and some of the guilt I was feeling, because I was feeling really, really down last month and the month before. Really was like struggling a lot mentally, hence why you saw nothing from me content wise, but I struggled a lot to kind of find my footing again, and I haven't really felt that way in a while. Like I've gone through periods of depression, periods of happiness, periods of sadness, periods of anxiety, but this was another period of depression. So I called my parents and they were like, just come home and we will get you grounded, we'll get you straight. So that's what I did. I went home and, you know, and the beautiful thing about my parents is that they never really like forced me to open up to them about what was going on. They just sort of let me talk about it how I wanted to talk about it. And it came up naturally, and I just felt so sad for how I treated them. I felt like I was a bad kid for a really long time. I felt like I didn't study well in school. I felt like that sort of trickled into so many other relationships. So while a lot of my guilt and shame and regret stems from how I treated my parents in the past, I also had a lot of guilt, shame, and regret on how I went about my college experience, how my college experience kind of went about, friendships, and so many other things. Like so many things can happen when your home life is disruptive. And so I was feeling really sad. Sorry, my husband's calling me. Give me 1 second. So yeah, I think like I felt a lot of guilt throughout my life, just kind of feeling like, I was a bad kid at home. I felt like I wasn't, being a good student. So like, I think back to that time and I think of myself as somebody who like didn't do their job when they had that job. And like, I've always thought of myself as somebody who doesn't do their assigned duty when that duty is occurring. Like I'm always living in the present, or I wish I'm always living in the past or always living in the future. And I feel like at that time, I was like so eager to grow up and just so eager to get out of the house that, I just like didn't appreciate being a student and just like studying and just putting my head down and grinding. And now I think about that and I think about some of the patterns that I have like now with like procrastination and things like that, and how I wish I just like fixed it when I was younger. instead of like having to fix it now, you know? And like there's just so many lessons that I'm learning with the Bhagavad Gita and so many things I'm learning spiritually that it just feels like, oh my gosh, like what would my life be if I just corrected some of this stuff when I was younger, when that was like easier to fix. I can kind of hear my mom speaking as I'm saying this out loud. You're so young, you're 26, 27 years old, like you can still fix it now. And it's like, yes, but I feel like a part of me is just like so regretful. And that's the whole thing about this video today, is like how to move through that. So when I was talking to my parents, I just sort of like unloaded on them. I feel so much regret and so much sadness for making you guys go through as much as you did. And I just like, I don't think I articulated it very well, but I was like, I feel so bad and that I was such a bad kid. Like, do you guys forgive me? And like, I was like tearing up and stuff. And they were like, we forgave you a long time ago. And like, my dad said something that really stuck with me. And he was like, you know, if you think that we as your parents are merciful, then think about God. God is even more merciful than our parents are. And like our parents, like they accept us for who we are, but at the end of the day, they're also humans going on this life journey, and they're also learning, and they're also experiencing life through these eyes for the first time. And like we as children kind of have to give them grace too for being on this life path. Like everyone makes mistakes. Everyone is subject to shame, guilt, and regret. And we need to understand that our parents are also moving through a lot of painful things as well. You know, our parents try to protect us and try to not tell us everything that they're thinking about, and they want to be, you know, they want to be there for us. They want to be strong for us. And so I think it's our job as kids to sort of like meet them halfway and admire their strength and respect them for that and give them reverence for that. And at the same time, look at them as they are, people, right? And I know sometimes we look at our parents and we're like, wow, these people have really got their life together. And like, I can't imagine having, like my mom had me when she was 27. I'll be 27 this year. Like, can I imagine having a baby? It freaks me out. As much as I like think I want one, I'm like always 50-50 on that. And I'm like, how does one just like have a baby? Like my mom was pregnant with me by this time. And so I just think about that and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know, I'm nowhere near where my parents are. And I think that's the issue, is comparison. You know, 27 years ago was a whole different world, and we're in this world now, and we have to make do with what we've got and with the knowledge that we have. So that's sort of like the background on how this video came about and why I've been focusing on guilt and shame and regret as of late. God knows why, but I have certainly no idea why this topic has been at the top of my mind for the past month. I think it's time for me to move through some things. I think it's time for me to let go and put the past in the past. So how do we do that? So the first thing, and I'm gonna reiterate some of the stuff I said in my TikTok video in case you guys don't use TikTok. The first thing is to physically let go of the shame, regret, and guilt. In the book Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer, he uses the word samskara as a way to describe sort of like the reason, and samsara is such a similar word. It means basically like the life cycle that we're in right now. So we can kind of use it interchangeably in this circumstance, just for this context. But I like to think of samskara as like the bars around your heart. So you have like, imagine like you have this bird cage around your heart. It's like you have bars on that bird cage, and the bars are basically like shame, regret, pain, anything that kind of brings you back into your past. It could even be happy memories, because like as we know, like karma has to be at a net zero. So even any sort of like memories that you have, whether it be happy memories or sad memories, like can kind of provide this sense of desire to either go back to the past or basically do anything but live in the present. And so the bars around your heart, the more bars you have, the less light can filter into your heart, which prevents you from having an open heart to all of life's experiences. And so when I have so much shame and so much guilt and I'm constantly thinking about it, I'm just sort of adding more and more bars around my heart, which doesn't really allow me to have an open heart to all of life's experiences. Kind of going back to my glasses analogy, the more I have shame and guilt, the more that the lenses on my glasses are going to be filled with that prescription. Although I know logically that my parents love and respect me, I won't be able to see that as it is, right, in the moment. And that's what matters, right? Yes, it's very nice that we can reflect on things and be like, oh wow, my parents do love me, but it's more important to see it when it's happening. And so that can only happen when the perspective shift occurs. And so I think it's important to understand how to even visualize where shame and guilt could be potentially sitting. The Muladhara chakra, the lowest chakra, the root chakra, is all about who you are, that stability, the foundation. It's where we sit. It's about the I am. It's about the sense of security. A lot of financial trauma, any sort of sexual trauma can kind of reside there. And so a lot of the shame and guilt also resides there too. It's the lowest. There's so much I can say about shame and guilt, right? Shame is like the lowest on the vibrational scale. It's the lowest part of it's the lowest on our chakra system. And so when we want to unblock it, how do we do that? How do we actually let go of the shame and guilt? We use the same pathway of letting go by David Hawkins. So let's do that together. Take a deep breath in and out. Okay, you're gonna just take a deep breath. Just cleansing breath, and then take a deep breath in. Hold, 2, 3, 4, and out. In again. Hold, 2, 3, 4, and out. Let's do one more. In. Hold, 2, 3, 4, and out. Okay. Now I want you to imagine where in your body you are experiencing any sort of pain. Now I want you to think about the place in your body where you could be experiencing some discomfort. I'm a little sick, so my head hurts. That made me a little dizzy, breathing that deeply. My throat hurts. My nose hurts. My stomach hurts. So I'm just gonna go to the parts of my body that is experiencing discomfort. And I'm gonna focus on that part of my body. I'm not gonna judge it. I'm not going to imagine where it's coming from. I'm just going to localize it. Just understand that it's there. No judgment. No thoughts. And that's it. You just let the pain sit. And with this energy, I like to couple it with like a journal exercise. So just writing down a list of your regrets, a list of your pieces of shame, a list of the things that you are guilty for, and sort of write like your confessional. And you can do that before the breathing exercise, you can do that after the breathing exercise, but use the breathing exercise as a tool to help you move through the pain that you're feeling. And I like to do this all day, every day. This is my mechanism of letting go. There are lots of different ways to let go, but this is the one that's worked best for me and the one that I return to the most. So highly recommend to just breathe it out. Imagine the pain wherever it is sitting and just let it be. Don't judge it, don't try to change it, don't try to get rid of it. Because a lot of the problem is that we've repressed and suppressed our guilt, shame, and regret for so long, and then one fine day it comes knocking on your door and they're like, work on it today. And you're like, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, I have to work. What do you mean work on this guilt, shame, and regret? But that's what happens to me all the time. Some fine morning I wake up and it's like, okay, now you have to work on this, and you just do. And it's so much better now that we have this spiritual knowledge to just bravely walk into our shame and guilt. Like, cause what's the worst that could happen? Like, you already did the thing. You already did the bad thing. What's the problem in readdressing it? There's nothing to be afraid of. We don't need to add fear on top of shame and guilt. Just bravely walk into some of your fears, bravely walk into your guilt, bravely walk into your shame, and just say, you know what? The me today would not do this. The me then did it. She was okay with it. She was happy with those decisions. She might not have known the repercussions of her actions, but she did them. Now me today can look at that girl and say, yeah, you messed up, but look at how much has happened as a result of me messing up. I mean, I live a pretty good life. So I think it's just about perspective. So that's the physical part. Now let's talk about intellectualizing the feeling. I think the physical part is far more important than the intellectualizing of the feeling, because this is what we always do. We always intellectualize or rationalize our feelings, and we never actually feel them. When you're in the place to do so, just write down that list of all the things that you are regretful for, the things that you're guilty of, the things that you're ashamed of, and breathe through it and meditate on it and realize that it's not going to be a one and done thing. Just because you did this exercise tonight does not mean that tomorrow morning you're going to be shameless and regretless and guiltless. You are probably still going to have to chip away, but that's the process. This is now you are now beginning this process. So respect that you are a novice and approach this with humility. It's not going to go away in one day, especially if you have a boulder like I did. So yeah, I use the word did. I no longer feel like I have a boulder. Because this process really does work. You just have to do it every day and respect the journey. Side note, practice respecting others by respecting yourself. You do that by just, humbly asking God and saying, can you please help me through this? And he will provide you the resources that you need. You can't really do anything without God. You have to ask him for help, and we can't move through life without asking and praying for anything, honestly. And so just humbly go to God, say, hey, I'm working on all of my shit. Don't say hey, but I'm working on all my shame and my guilt and my regret. Can you please help me, Bhagavan? And go to your Ishtadevam and just pray. And so that has been the trigger to all of this, is just me asking God, please help me through this. Let's talk about intellectualizing your feelings. So we kind of touched on it a little bit, but the me today would not commit to the mistakes that I made then. And so I can sort of sit there and resolve it in my own mind and say, you know what? The life path that was put forth because of the mistakes I made, I am happy I'm on that life path. Going back to my dad's comment about how, God is extremely merciful, he brought me closer to Bhagavad Gita, to spiritual knowledge, to the beautiful people in my life. He brought me closer to my parents than I thought was possible. He brought me closer to my husband than I thought was possible. He gave me food every single day. I still have a job. I have a roof above my head. All of my limbs work. My body is healthy. I have a loving sister. I have family and friends, endless amount of family and friends. Like I have water every day, food, the list really goes on all of the blessings God has given me. He could have just yanked it all away from me at any time. He could have made me not believe in him, right? But the fact that I still believe in him, the fact that I still continuously have blessings, shows me that he's also forgiven me. And so I had a question, we're going on this spiritual journey. We're going on this, we're talking about the Bhagavad Gita. We're talking about all these things. Do I have the license to say the words that I just said? Do I have the license to say, hey, my life turned out the way it did, and maybe it's okay that I made that mistake? Do I have the license to forgive myself? And I sort of have come to this thought process with the help of my parents that, if I have the license to feel so guilty and so regretful and so shameful, then I also have the license to forgive myself. Because who is guilt helping? Who is shame helping? Who is regret helping? Let's go back to the vibrational scale, right? We can conclude that peace, love, enlightenment, joy, all of those things help other people, right? If I'm a peaceful person, I am going to be not only altruistic, but also just I can go out into my community and I will open arms help as many people as I can. A peaceful person wants to share the peace. A loving person loves others. A joyful person spreads joy. A compassionate person spreads compassion. An enlightened person spreads enlightenment. A shameful person spreads shame. A regretful person spreads regret. A guilty person spreads the guilty feeling. It's just how it works. The way that we feel is how we make others feel as well. And so if I want to be responsible for how I treat my community, I have to be responsible for myself. Oxygen mask on myself before I apply it to others. There's a million analogies that I could use to explain this, but the number one thing is that shame, regret, and guilt is not helping your community at all. It doesn't help anybody. We can't be a source of love and peace. We cannot change the world. A lot of us are like keyboard warriors, right? Like a lot of us are so brave to go online and be like, this is the worst thing about America. This is why the world sucks. This is the Kali Yugam at action. This is why this politician is this, and we have a million things to say about a million other people, and we're keyboard warriors. I'm posting on the internet as well, right? But we're not taking a look at our own thought processes. We're not looking at the energy that we're spreading. Shame, regret, and guilt, we all have it in varying capacities, right? Unless you are seriously working on your spirituality every single day and seriously working on your mind and your thoughts, there's a small part of you that's going to feel like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, right? And if there isn't, amazing, please write in the comments how you did it, because I would love to learn. But my whole thing is like, we all kind of experience these feelings, and I think it's important to just take a look at them and say, how is this helping anybody? Because I'm not helping anybody by feeling guilty. You saw in my previous example, I can't even see that my parents love and respect me. I can't even see that my husband adores me when I have guilt, shame, and regret as my glasses. I'm not saying that that's my dominant feeling. Obviously, we're talking in extremes here, but I think that helps illustrate the point a little bit better. But I think it's so important to look at how your energy is affecting others. If at least you can't help yourself, do it for the people around you, right? A lot of us, I think there was this survey, I'm trying to think about where I read this. It said something along the lines of like, we are so much more likely to help other people than help ourselves. And how sad is that? That is so like, I don't know if it's sad, but it's definitely interesting. It's definitely interesting that we're way more likely to like try to do something for the sake of somebody else rather than doing it for ourselves. Like why is it so hard for so many people to go to the gym? Because like the only person that it's helping is me. And so I don't want to do it. But it's like, if someone says like, hey, can you drop me off at the airport? Like, I'm not going to hesitate. I'm just going to go drop them off at the airport. Ask me to make that same appointment with myself to the gym, and I probably will skip it because it's me. And so it's the same thing where it's like, we have to take accountability of our own energy. And so I hope that persuaded you, at least from the community perspective. So we've covered, the blessings that we have. God allows us to, not believe in him. God allows us to question him. God allows us to just make as many mistakes as we can to learn the lesson, right? And I asked this question, like, do I have the authority to resolve or absolve my own guilt? And my dad says, and my mom says, you know what? Yeah, you do. You have the ability to rewrite the way that you think about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten all these blessings. And so it's really your frame of mind that's preventing you from moving through life. And that's empowering. That's a sense of responsibility. It's a sense of accountability and autonomy on your own life. We have the free will to move through our pain. So take it. And the way that I'm going to be going about this, I'm going into some practical examples other than the breathing technique and other than intellectualizing. I'm probably not covering everything that the TikTok videos covered, so be sure to watch those as well if you're interested in learning more about this. And I probably will make part 2, 3, 4 because this topic is very, very near and dear to my heart. It's something that I feel all the time and I want to actively move through it. And I also just find the idea of energy to be so interesting. I mean, the way that it affects everybody around us. Something that's so important to me and so many other people is being there for others. And, you know, think about like the advice we give others, think about the food we serve to others, think about like the small thing, like, can you go get me a glass of water? Like me pouring the water into somebody, you know, like all these little things, like we're transferring energy in so many different ways through speech, through just being there around somebody. Like, don't we want to provide another human a good experience? The way we do that is by living cleanly as much as we can. And we're not going to be perfect, but we can take steps to try our very best. So some practical things, I definitely encourage you to read as much as you can. I think the more spiritual books you read, the more you know, content that you consume that's good content and that's gonna serve you. I think that's the best place to start. So many people are on TikTok, so many people are on Instagram, and we don't know what energy everybody's carrying. And I'm not saying don't scroll on TikTok, don't consume social media. I'm not gonna go that far. I'm not gonna shame you about using social media. I didn't even look at myself once. I'm not gonna shame you about social media by any means, but at the same time, I think it's important to recognize that everyone has their own biases, has their own perspective, has their own stuff that they're going through. And so just be mindful of the content that you're consuming and watch good videos, read good books, do things that are fulfilling to your mind. Just like how we're encouraged to eat healthy, it's also important to feed your brain good food, good content. So I would start there, read a lot of spiritual books, and then just journal about your regret, your shame, and your guilt that you're feeling. Just go ahead and get all of your thoughts down on paper. You don't even have to reread it, just write it down. The simple art of journaling is so incredible. Like, I highly recommend before you go to bed or right when you wake up or both, to just brain dump everything. You don't even have to read it. You don't have to have good handwriting. No one is judging you for it. You shouldn't be judging yourself for it. And your English teacher is not gonna come and tell you about your grammar. So just write it all down, and it doesn't have to be clean. Just get your thoughts on a piece of paper and do that for like a week or, you know, a month, and see how you feel. There's a stark difference in how I am to other people if I journaled that day. So I think it's a great tool. I think meditating and the breath work that we talked about before is extremely beneficial. The next time you're irritated or the next time you feel shameful or angry, take a deep breath. My dad said this in a reference to a whole other conversation. He was like, before you respond to anyone, just like literally pause for 5 seconds. And then say your answer. Like, you see how my voice already lowered? Like, I felt it lower even if it didn't register on the camera. Like, I felt like I got calmer just in those 5 seconds, and I'm not even angry right now. So I feel like if I was, you know, really angry, or if I was feeling really shameful or regretful, just like, okay, I'm good now, you know? And so I think that's really beneficial. Kind of going along those lines, I think just check in with your body every day and do your best to just intellectualize and say, you know what, the me then made those mistakes. And yeah, that sucks that I have to sort of live with that and, you know, sort of be haunted by it, but I don't actually have to live with it. You know, I have the choice to move through it. And then the last and final thing, and I think the most important thing, is that you are not your body, you are your soul. And so all the pain that you're experiencing right now is body related, temporary, will burn away. It's gone once you die. Your atma, however, is untouched. So an insult, shame, regret, it doesn't have to stick with my atma. It doesn't stick with my atma because my atma is happy. It's always learning, you know, it comes into this life to see life through my eyes so that it can go further on its path. That's what's so important, is for my soul to advance. And so my body related problems won't come with me into the afterlife and into my next life if I have one. And so all I can do is register that when I say I am my atma. I am not Janani. I am not this body. And that's another really great way to intellectualize these feelings, you know, if you're kind of over being sad about it. Your soul is looking at life through your eyes, and you are supposed to be learning all the lessons that you're learning right now. And God is extremely merciful. And I think it's important to just register that every single mistake that is put on your path and the things that you commit to, the mistakes that you make, are there to help you learn another lesson. And we've heard that so many times, but really register it. Really register that. Don't harbor more shame and guilt for not learning a lesson faster. Perfectionism is just an excuse. And do your best to move through life in a way that allows you to actually learn and absorb. How do we actually learn and absorb? We have to listen. And that comes with being tapped in. That comes from having a higher vibration, higher frequency, and by praying all the time. So commit to a spiritual practice, commit to praying, commit to surrendering, and commit to a little bit of humility. And then you'll be able to learn the lessons while they're happening instead of having to learn them later. And again, it's not a problem if we learn them later, but like why? Why when we can right now, right? And so again, do your best to just sort of pray and like have an open ear to all of life's lessons. And the way that we do that is by just raising our vibration and to get out of the shame and guilt and realize, you know what, I made these mistakes, yeah, and I'm sorry. Please forgive me, God. Please forgive me, self, which is sometimes really, really hard, right? I forgive myself for the mistakes that I've made. I choose to live a better life now. And yeah, I might fall again, and I will get back up, and I'm gonna fall again. I'm gonna make mistakes over and over again, but it's gonna get me closer and closer to that point where I've actually learned the lesson. So don't judge yourself for how long something takes you, right, to learn. I've made the same mistake thousands of times. I continue making mistakes today, you know, and it's part of the journey. And if you have the ability and the authority to feel the shame and guilt, you have the authority to forgive yourself for it. So with that, I hope I covered everything. I think I did. I'm sure there's gonna be more to say. Once I edit this video, I'm probably gonna be like, oh, I wish I mentioned this. So I hope I covered everything. If I didn't, I will make a part 2, probably, and hopefully feeling a lot better. I appreciate all of those who have subscribed to me, even though I've given you no content. You guys are extremely kind, and I see all of your comments. I see all of your DMs. I see your, I see everything that you guys are sending me, and I'm hearing you, and I will provide what you want me to provide. I know this video is a little bit different. You guys, none of you have asked for this video. I just felt compelled. And more Sanatana Dharma focused content will be coming soon. I am working on it. So with that, I'll leave you. Thank you for everything that you've done for me. I really, really cannot even begin to express my gratitude. So I appreciate you, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.